So now what we're going to do is we're going to do a on-bike chain length assessment using the Park CC3. There is a new version of this tool. Park has, I think it's called the CC 3.1 or something like that, and it's just a little bit longer. It takes a longer sample of the chain. This one works just fine as well though. So what we do is we'd basically just take the tool and rest this sort of concave surface up against the roller. See how this says 0.75? That would indicate that if we could get this portion of the tool in behind this roller, then that would indicate that the chain is 75% worn. And you can see it's not going in, and that's not a surprise. This is a new chain on a new bike, and we only use these chains and these bikes for working on and teaching in our courses. So it is a new chain. If this was a used chain and if it was showing 75% worn, then this end of the tool would just slip right in front of this roller right here, and that would indicate that it's 75% worn. The next thing that you'd want to do if we get that reading of 75% wear is flip the tool over, and you'll see it says 1.0 on this side. Again, this is going to rest in against a roller on this side, and I'm putting some gentle pressure on it, and I try and slip this portion of the tool in behind this roller, and if we could get it in behind the roller, which again we can't, would indicate that the chain is indeed 100% worn. If the chain is 100% worn, you definitely want to remove that chain and replace it. If it's 75% worn, but it's not 100% worn, if you check the 75 and then check and it fits in behind, and then you check the 1 and it doesn't fit in behind, well, that means the chain is somewhere in between 75% and 100% worn, and you should probably think about getting a chain relatively soon before the additional added length of the chain starts to cause some damage to your other drivetrain parts, like your chain rings or your cassette. This tool is Park's CC2. This is another on-bike chain wear indicator tool. And it's just a little bit fancier. It's definitely more expensive than the CC3. And how this one works is basically it's got a little sort of swivel here on a cam, and what you'd want to do is it's got grades on it 0 to 1.0, and then 0.75, 0.5, and 0.25 in between. You'd want to set it so it's at the 0 like this, and then it has 2 pins. Okay, these 2 pins are going to fit into the chain like that. And now what I would do is I would just push this little tab down, applying some gentle pressure to it, well, a little bit more than gentle pressure to it, and basically now I'm spreading the lengths apart, and there's a little window in the top of the tool that allows me to read how worn the chain is. And so this is, again, you're looking for that 0.75 to 1.0 in terms of 75% worn and 100% worn. And this chain is indicating less than 50% wear, so it's fine. Again, what we were expecting, because it is a brand new chain, and these bikes are only used for demonstration purposes and or mechanic practice. So what we're going to do now is an online chain length assessment of the bike, of the chain I should say. The reason we want to do this first before we remove the chain from the bike is so that when we go to replace the chain with a new chain, if the chain is the proper length, then what we can do is we can line up the old chain with the new chain and just basically shorten the job up. It's not going to take so much trial and error trying to nail down that proper chain length. Okay, so what we're looking for is we want to put the chain into the different combinations of the bike, the extremes, if you will. So we want to be in the small chain ring in the front and the small ring in the back. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to shift them in that position. So we're in our small chain ring in the front, and now I'm moving to the small cog in the back. Now what I'm looking for here is I want to make sure that there's enough tension on the chain that we don't see a dip in the chain. What we don't want to see is we don't want to see the chain doing this. We don't want to see this type of a dip into the chain. We want to make sure that there's enough tension on the chain that it's taking out any slack in the smallest combinations of the bike. So small in the back and small in the front. Now what we're going to do is we're going to shift our chain. We're going to do this in a specific orientation or order of operations for the rear, just in case if the chain is too short, we don't want to accidentally cause any damage to the rear derailleur. So how we can avoid that is we can shift the front chain ring first. So our chain is in our big ring in the front. Now we can slowly bring the chain up to the large chain ring in the rear, okay? Now, if we start to see an extreme angle on the derailleur, then we can stop shifting, and that way we won't cause any damage to the rear derailleur. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to start shifting up, and sure enough, we're at the top now. So we're in our large combination, and what we're looking for here is anywhere from about a 55 to 60 degree angle on the rear derailleur cage, this being the rear derailleur cage. So if we hold the bike level, something like that, what we don't want to see is we don't want to see anything more than 65, 68 degrees, something like that. This one may be a touch short. It's not terrible though. Certainly if the chain were too short, sorry, I should sort of position myself so you can see. If the chain were too short, then the cage angle would look something like this, okay? And this would not be sufficient. This chain would be too short at that point. I've gone ahead and I've shifted the chain back down into a middle position, so middle ring, middle of the cassette. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the chain. So I'm going to push the rivet out of the chain like I'd shown you before, but this time it's obviously on the bike and not on a tool bench. So I'm going to do that. Now there's a couple of considerations here to make sure that you select the proper pin to push through. What you want to do is you always want to push a lead pin through. So in every outer link there's a lead pin and a trailing pin. Okay, so this is an outer link. You want to make sure that the lead pin is the pin in the outer plates that initiates through the drivetrain first. So the drivetrain is rotating in this type of a direction. So a lead pin would be this one, or this one, or this one, or this one. It's going to be one in every other pin. Another thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you do not push out a pin that's already been replaced once before. The replacement pins are slightly larger in diameter, and so they're made to basically press back into the chain. If you try and push in through a pin that's already been replaced once before, through the same hole, then it will not work. The chain probably will fail. So here I've selected my lead link, and I've got my chain tool, and the pin is, or the driving portion of the tool is pushed up against the pin. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drive that out, all the way out, just like before. And now I'm going to back the tool off. And the chain's going to want to snap back, so you're going to want to hang on to it. And it wants to snap back because of the spring tension on the rear derailleur. And there we go. We have the chain out of the bike now. So here is our old chain. I've just got it laid out on another workbench here. And here's our new 9-speed chain that's we're gonna put back on our new mountain bike. And I'll just sort of unbox this and show you what's in here. It comes with a new pin, new push pin, okay? That's specifically for 9-speed. Each of these push pins, by the way, are a different size for both 8, 9, 10, and 11-speed bikes, so these pins are not interchangeable. If you're going to be using a 9-speed chain on a 9-speed drivetrain, like you should, you need to have a 9-speed push pin in order to do that. I'm going to, here's our chain, and then here's our tech instructions that come with it. Tech instructions are always good. I always recommend reading these things for sure. They'll let you know any idiosyncrasies about the component that you're replacing. Torque specs, all kinds of great information can be found on those. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to unpackage our new chain. And here we go. It comes with a bunch of shipping anti-rust coating on it that should be cleaned off as well. Depends on, you know, what year, how old the chain is. Shimano used to recommend cleaning the chains off before you reinstall them on the bike. Now I believe that you can just go ahead and directly put the chain on the bike without having to clean them off. So here we go. I'm just going to line up the new chain to the end of the old chain, and I'm going to pull the chain tight, and sure enough, I don't know if we can see that. Looks like we can. Good. Here is where I would disconnect this chain right here, and that's going to give us our proper length. One of the pitfalls that a person doing this for the first time can find themselves in is, so we've got the length determined we want to make sure that there is, basically, when you go to separate the chain, that you end up with an inner plates portion and an outer plates portion. What can happen, a very, very common mistake when sizing a chain, is that someone will push, the mechanic will push the wrong side out, and you'll end up with two, say like, you know, two ends of the chain that look like this, or two ends of the chain that look like this, and guess what? I mean, that's just not going to work. So make sure that you end up with, for lack of a better term, a male portion and a female portion, and or an outer plate set and an inner plate set being able to be joined together like that. We want to make sure that the chain is going through in the proper direction, meaning that in this particular case, the lead link needs to go through the drivetrain first, and the drivetrain operates in this direction. So the lead link is going to be, here's an outer plate section. Lead link is the one that's in front. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to put that through the front derailleur and make sure that the chain ends up on this side, the front portion of the bike side of the bottom bracket shell. We're going to go through the stays in the back, seat stays, going to go around the cog. Actually, if you want to do yourself a, here's another tip, is shift the bike so you're all the way into the outermost cog or the smallest cog. That way we can drape the chain over the cassette and then around the pulley wheel and not have to fight any deflection in the chain that would be caused by the chain being in a different gear than what we're trying to position it through. So here we go. Okay, so here's just another angle showing the chain being threaded onto the drivetrain properly. So again, we have our lead link initiating through the drivetrain first. So we put it through the front derailleur mechanism. And here we are going in the inside of the seat stays. We're going to go over top like this of the cassette, and then making sure that we go around this side of the pulley wheel. Now we're going to come up through and make sure you get the chain in behind this little protector here. Okay, another common mistake is, and I see it all the time, mechanics will put the chain over that guard, that little protector plate. You want to make sure that you're under it, or else your drivetrain will make all kinds of noise and the bike just won't shift properly either. Now here's another area here, right? We want to make sure that we're in behind that as well. Again, you don't want to be in a position where the chain is riding on the outside of the derailleur cage. You want the chain riding on the pulley wheels, like that.